Hello, I'm Dr. Robert Cialdini. Welcome to my official online on-demand program. I'm delighted that you've chosen to embark on a level of learning that will assist you in becoming a more skilled practitioner of influence. Throughout this course, we will be taking an in-depth look at proven research on the 7 universal principles of persuasion. From the outset, we have built into the course 3 main differentiators that separate it from other influence or persuasion programs. First, it is based entirely on properly conducted scientific research into what increases the likelihood that people will say yes to a request. We're not going to be talking about hunches or speculations or war stories. Now, we'll be including stories and narratives and examples, but we're not going to base our conclusions on those. We're going to base our conclusions, and I'll make a commitment to you now, we're going to base our conclusions entirely on research that documents the power of particular influence strategies and principles. The second differentiator is that our program focuses on influence approaches that are not only effective, but are also entirely ethical. Look, no one wants to be tricked or misled or in some other way moved to do something that they didn't really want to do because they were misguided, right? If they see that, they never want to return to any influence agent who tried to move them in that direction. So we're going to equip you with influence strategies and tactics and approaches that are not only effective, but ethical as well, so both sides gain. And as a result, those people who have gained from their interactions with you will want to return to do business in the future with you. It's a perfect marriage of ethics and effectiveness. Right? One last differentiator. The program is designed to do more than merely educate you about the principles. This isn't a college course. No. We're going to demonstrate how to implement that knowledge to increase your persuasive success. Right? That's the key. The key is to be able to move people in your direction, not just because you know about the principles of influence, but you know how to harness them. You know how to apply them. You know how to implement them in ways that move those individuals in your directions. Now, in focusing on this implementation differentiation, we're going to give you 2 influence aids toward the implementation process, the application process. The first is called the small big. The smallest thing you can do in changing your influence approach that will produce the biggest impact on your influence success, right? Your persuasive success, right? I first came upon the power and the importance of small bigs like that when I was doing platform presentations at various kinds of conferences or conventions. And if I was talking about the 7 principles of influence, and let's say I was talking about one of them, the principle of reciprocation, let's say, if I ever said to the audience, now, I'm going to give you the smallest thing you can do to harness the enormous power of this basic and potent human tendency to reciprocate, right? The room falls silent. Pens poise over pads, fingers over keys, and I get the audience attention almost as completely as if I had mentioned sex. Why? ROI is why. Return on investment is why. If I can give you a small tactic that requires maybe just changing a word or two in your presentation, or maybe the sequence of the order of your presentation, right? Something as small as that, and it produces a big impact on your success. That's an enormous return on that small investment of time and effort. So we'll be sure that in each of the principles, we will include at least one or two small bigs to give you access to this great return on investment tactic, the small big. The second implementation aid that we're going to provide for you within the program is something we call your personal action plan. Throughout the program, we will take you through a variety of exercises that will ensure that you understand the 7 principles and can apply them with the greatest impact. But there is one exercise that will be most important. In it, you'll tackle a specific persuasion challenge you're currently facing. As you move through the course, you'll continuously build an influence plan to attack that specific influence challenge, ending up with an actionable influence blueprint that is uniquely yours. Let's dive a little deeper into what that entails. During the course, you'll be asked to identify one specific persuasion challenge that you are or will be facing that is especially pressing or difficult. It can involve optimizing your credibility with potential clients, getting leaders in your organizations to buy in to your proposals. It can involve marketing or selling a product, and any other situation that could benefit from greater persuasive skills. We're going to ask you to use as much detail as possible when completing the exercise form we will provide, such as who's involved in the situation with you? What do you hope to accomplish there? What are your goals? What barriers exist to obtaining a positive outcome that are resisting your attempts to achieve your goals? And finally, what are some solutions to the problem that you've already tried? This scenario will be the foundation for constructing an immediately applicable persuasion plan. After each module, you'll be given the opportunity to apply what you've learned in that module to your personal persuasion challenge. And by the end of the course, you will have a detailed action plan to help you handle your current challenge, as well as, and this is so important, as well as a method for handling your future influence challenges. The future is crucial. As Socrates stated, education is not the filling of a vessel, it is the kindling of a flame. I hope you'll enjoy this controlled burn of a truly hot learning experience. One big reason to study persuasion is that it is very powerful. So powerful that failing to leverage it properly can bankrupt even a huge corporation worth billions of dollars. Take, for example, the massively expensive lawsuit between Texaco and Getty Oil in 1985. The court case involved multiple arcane aspects of the law that were hard to understand even for legal experts. Pundits and journalists thought it would take weeks to arrive at a verdict because the issues were so complex and dense. Thus, everyone was amazed when it only took a few hours for the jury to come back with a clear verdict against Texaco for $11.1 billion, the largest civil settlement in U.S. history at the time. That amount was so large, it forced Texaco to seek bankruptcy protection. Because the verdict was both shockingly quick and extreme, journalists tracked down the jury foreman, Jim Shannon, and asked him why the decision was made so rapidly and so decisively. Shannon said that as the Texaco lawyers were presenting their case, they seemed to have scorn for others in the room, including the jury. A vice president from Texaco was described as pompous, arrogant, and full of himself. And a key Texaco witness wouldn't even make eye contact with jury members. What could have happened here? Did Getty Oil have better lawyers? No, the jury didn't report that. Did the multi-week complicated trial exhaust the jury? No, the jury didn't mention anything about fatigue. Was it just that they felt poorly treated by Texaco lawyers relative to the Getty lawyers? Exactly. Foreman Shannon and his fellow jurors were relying on non-legal factors to decide the case. The lawyers were working hard to make the best arguments they could. But Mr. Jamail, the lead attorney for Getty, who made over $300 million from this case by behaving properly within it, remarked that when someone doesn't look at you directly in the eye, it means you can't trust them. What's more, how do you feel towards someone who treats you in a scornful way? You dislike them, right? So, Texaco lost because it ignored two strategies of effective influence. First, Texaco failed to safeguard the trustworthiness of its legal authorities. And second, it failed to train its representatives to appear likable in the jury's eyes. Both of these things, trustworthiness through authority and liking, are principles of persuasion that you will learn to apply in this training so that nothing similar will ever happen to you. So, one of the two main reasons we study principles of persuasion is that persuading properly can make a massive difference in changing people's behavior, as is evident from the Texaco case. The second reason is that persuasion doesn't require the use of force, threats, or hierarchical control. Think about how you would feel if you were forced into doing something you really didn't want to do. When people feel coerced, they often find ways to undermine the goals of those doing the pressuring. If employees feel that they're frequently coerced, they may seek to leave the organization or retaliate in other ways. This is particularly problematic with high-performing employees who usually have options outside of the organization. It might be convenient for leaders to strong-arm people into compliance, but they'll eventually lose talent and opportunities. Instead, leaders can get hoped-for change through the ethical use of persuasion. Wise managers spend upwards of 80% of their time in verbal communication, most of it attempting to guide and persuade fellow employees. Great influencers educate others into assent without any threats. Because the principles of persuasion are all anchored in published science, they're more trustworthy than other advice you may have encountered. But these principles are deceptively simple at the same time. They're so simple that many people shrug and say, "This is all common sense, nothing for me here to think too deeply about or plan my work around." But actually, there's much more to them, especially when it comes time to putting the principles into practice. And often, the science proves something different than common sense or folk wisdom would lead you to believe, which is good, because our initial assumptions and folk wisdom are often incorrect. Thankfully, there are decades of scientific research to draw on for better knowledge and practice. In the past, persuasion was thought of as only an art. But now that there is a science on the topic, we know that persuasion can be taught and learned. And the research is clear that people who learn to apply these teachings to their real-world environment can become as effective as those who have a natural talent for being persuasive. This training will teach you how communicators fall short when they don't understand how to apply these scientifically proven techniques for influence. When things get too complex or overwhelming, research shows that our minds look for ways to simplify the work and take decision-making shortcuts. Actually, this benefits the ethical persuader. We now live in a more complex environment than ever before. Just think about the items we use now that our parents or grandparents couldn't dream of. Think of all the choices and decisions thrust upon us that they never had to deal with. The futurists of 50 years ago thought that by now we were supposed to be a culture being taken care of by machines, leaving us with endless leisure time and no worries. But in reality, these technologies have overloaded us with information and made our work more complex. So we need ways of simplifying our world. Crucially, the 7 principles of influence offer people those simplifying ways to choose. They form what we call decision triggers, or single, reliable pieces of information that generally serve to guide people in making their decisions. Need a concrete example of how powerful a simple decision trigger can be? Let's look at an instance of how a chain of grocery stores found a simple decision trigger to promote sales. Occasionally, the managers of these stores attached signs marked "Everyday Low Price" in front of randomly selected brands. The prices of the products remained the same as before, but how much do you think sales increased? Although the prices hadn't changed, sales of the brands labeled "Everyday Low Price" increased by 100%. What could account for this effect? Researchers found that it was that the "Everyday Low Price" sign looked enough like a sale sign, which triggered people's automatic tendency to decide for it. They didn't process the situation any more deeply than, "This kind of sign usually indicates a bargain." As a result, sales doubled again. Small change, big effect.